Um, Welcome back to the deep dive. I want you to just close your eyes for a second. Imagine it's late winter, specifically February 28, 1966.
Right in the dead of winter.
Yeah, exactly. You're in Elmira, New York. It's a Monday night, and the wind is probably just rattling the window panes, right? It's cold, the streets are totally dark, and inside this one warm living room, a husband and wife are settling in for, well, it's not exactly a game of Scrabble or, watching the nightly news.
It's definitely not Scrabble. It's a session. And tonight we are looking at something that sits right on that strange kind of fuzzy line between the totally mundane, like neck pain and post office mix-ups, and the absolutely impossible.
It's that blend of the chill and the chilling that really defines these early sessions. We're going to be unpacking session 236 of the Seth material today. But before we get into the ghost stories and the psychological profiling, we do need to get the housekeeping done. This deep dive is distributed free of charge on all major platforms for educational purposes.
Right. And just to be super specific, our source material today is session 236 of the early sessions book 5 of the Seth material, which was recorded on February 28, 1966. And that's published by the New Awareness Network.
Yeah, and full credit to the publishers for keeping this archive available for all of us. Now, the mission today isn't just to recount what happened like a history lesson. We really want to understand the mechanics of what's happening here. We aren't just talking about ghosts rattling chains.
No, it's much more practical than that.
Right. We're talking about how high strangeness sort of bleeds into everyday life. I mean, have you ever been anxious for hours for just no reason, only to find out it was a specific event happening miles away?
Or hearing a radio playing clear as day when your house is completely silent.
Or, and this is the hook that really got me, having a disembodied entity critique a psychologist's fashion sense.
The checkered vest.
The checkered vest. I cannot wait to get to the checkered vest. But let's start with the context. What I really appreciate about session 236 is that it doesn't start with the secrets of the universe. It starts with something incredibly grounded.
It starts with a dream about a dad.
It does. And honestly, to really get the vibe of this Monday night session, you have to look at the prequel. There was this short, unscheduled moment the night before on February 27th. That's Robert Butts, Jane Roberts' husband. He had a nightmare.
And not just a monster under the bed kind of nightmare. This was real-world fear.
Exactly. In the dream, Rob was convinced his father was dying. Now, his father was 75 at the time. He was staying in a nursing home. So this wasn't some abstract fear. This was a very plausible, grounded anxiety.
And I think most listeners can really relate to that. You have a vivid dream about a loved one dying. You wake up in a cold sweat, and your very first thought is this psychic? Is this a warning?
That's the classic trap, right? We tend to over-index on the paranormal when we're afraid. Rob was genuinely worried this was a precognitive event. So Seth, the entity Jane channels, steps in. And what I find interesting is that he doesn't act like a spooky oracle here. He doesn't say the sands of time are running out or anything like that. He sounds more like a family therapist.
He really does. Seth analyzes the dream and effectively tells Rob to relax. He confirms that the death of Rob's father is not imminent. He explains that the dream wasn't a fortune-telling moment. It was totally symbolic. It was built entirely around Rob's subconscious fears.
Which is such a crucial distinction for anyone interested in dream analysis. Not every vivid dream is a signal from the future. Sometimes a cigar is just a cigar, and a dream about death is just about your own anxiety.
Seth gets very granular here, too. He points out that the core issue in the dream wasn't death at all. It was communication. He tells Rob there's a lack of easy communication between him and his father. The dream was dramatizing Rob's fear that his father would die before they fixed that connection.
Wow, that hits hard. It's the fear of unfinished business.
Precisely. And Seth notes, somewhat bluntly actually, that while this gap is more the father's fault, Rob is the one with the power to bridge it. He shifts Rob's focus from fear of loss to opportunity for connection. He basically says, stop worrying about him dying and go talk to him.
It's so practical. It moves the conversation from ghost story to counseling session. And speaking of generational gaps, there is this really interesting sidebar right after the dream discussion. Rob and Jane start talking about how surprised they are by the younger generation.
You have to remember, this is 1966. The counterculture is really just starting to boil over.
Yeah.
Rob and Jane are a bit older, a bit more established, and they are looking at these 20-year-olds and realizing, wait, these kids actually believe in this stuff.
They're shocked that the youth are accepting ideas like time travel and clairvoyance and dream realities.
And Seth's take on this is fascinating because he isn't surprised at all. He says young people are intuitively aware of much more than one gives them credit for.
What does he mean by that, though? Is he saying they're just smarter?
Not smarter necessarily, but he's arguing that we are all born with an intuitive connection to a broader reality. Children and young adults haven't fully closed those doors yet. Society education, the daily grind that kind of beats the intuition out of us as we age. Seth is saying the youth are just still plugged in.
It's the okay boomer moment in reverse. Seth is telling Rob and Jane the kids are all right. In fact, the kids are right.
And he gives them actionable advice. He tells them, don't hide this information. If a young person shows interest, help them. Recommend books. Be a mentor. He saw the shift in consciousness coming before the summer of love even happened.
Let's pivot to something that feels a little more life hacky. This is probably the most technical part of the session regarding self-improvement. Seth moves from family therapy to what I'd call subconscious hacking 101. He starts talking about the mechanics of suggestion.
This is a segment that really separates the casual positive thinking crowd from the technical understanding of how the mind actually works. A lot of people talk about affirmations telling yourself, I am healthy or I am confident. But Seth drops a very specific rule here that most people miss entirely.
The daily rule.
Yes.
Yeah.
He says you must do it every single day. Not when you feel like it, not 3 times a week. Every day.
But the reason why is what completely blew my mind. It's not just about discipline or forming a habit in the traditional sense. It's about biology or maybe psychological biorhythms.
Right. This is the big insight for this section. Seth explains that in any given 30-day period, there are natural rhythms to our consciousness. He says that suggestion might only be truly deeply effective on maybe 3 or 4 of those days.
That is a tiny window, 3 or 4 days out of 30.
Exactly. And here's the kicker. We don't know which days those are. We don't have a calendar that says Tuesday is a high suggestibility day. Our conscious mind is blind to that inner rhythm.
So it's like playing the lottery.
In a way, yeah. Seth's logic is, if you practice suggestion every day, you're guaranteed to hit those 3 or 4 peak days when the channel is wide open. If you skip a day, you run the statistical chance of missing the one day where the suggestion would have taken root instantly.
That changes the whole game. It's not that the repetition itself forces the change. It's that the repetition ensures you are present when the door unlocks.
It's a numbers game. You have to show up to win.
And to prove that this works and that the inner self is actually listening, we get the pillow problem. This part made me laugh out loud because it's so incredibly mundane.
It is a wonderful example of how high-level metaphysics applies to low-level discomfort. Jane has been having neck pain, stiffness in the upper back, typical writer problems.
Now, if I went to a doctor, they'd say, take an aspirin. If I went to a psychic, they might say, you are carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders. What does Seth say?
He said, Jane, you are sleeping with your hands clenched.
It's so physical.
He explains that she tenses her hands in her sleep. The tension travels up the arms, across the shoulders, and boom, neck pain. It's a mechanical chain reaction caused by subconscious tension.
And the fix?
Suggestion. He tells her to use suggestion to train herself to sleep without a pillow.
Which sounds like a nightmare for comfort, by the way. I love my pillow.
Perhaps. But here is the evidence that the inner self is actually listening to these commands. Rob notes in the transcript that he woke up in the middle of the night and saw that Jane, while fast asleep, had physically pushed the pillow away.
She didn't do it consciously.
No. She gave herself the suggestion before bed, I will sleep without a pillow, and her subconscious executed the command while she was out cold.
It's such a small thing, pushing a pillow away, but it validates the whole mechanism we just talked about. If you can tell your sleeping self to move a pillow, and it does it cold, what else can you tell it to do?
That is the implication. It moves from fix your posture to rewire your reality. But you have to start with the pillow. You have to prove to yourself that the connection exists.
I love that. Okay, moving on to what might be the most dramatic part of this session. Segment 3, the critic and the manuscript. This plays out like a noir mystery.
It really does. So setting the scene, it's the same day, February 28th. Jane is having a terrible, no good, very bad day.
She is waiting for the galley proofs of her ESP book. This is a big deal. It's her major work. It's supposed to arrive via special delivery.
And the post office? Well, the post office does what the post office sometimes does. They lose the notice. Then when Jane goes to the post office, they lose the package itself in the building.
It's a comedy of errors. But Jane isn't laughing. She is stressed. She describes spending hours in a state of worry and anticipation.
And this is where the expert analysis from Seth comes in later. He suggests that this anxiety wasn't just random nervousness. Jane was actually picking up telepathically that the package was messed up.
She was right to be worried.
She was right, but she misinterpreted the signal. She thought, I'm just nervous or something bad is going to happen. Seth implies she was clairvoyantly tracking the error in real time. It's a classic case of mislabeling psychic data as just bad vibes.
That happens so often. We feel something is wrong, we rationalize it as anxiety, but it's actually data. So she finally gets the package, she tears it open, and it's not just her book.
No. The manuscript has been marked up.
Someone has written notes in the margins.
Yes, handwritten comments. And they aren't all nice. They range from scorn to approval.
Scorn to approval. That is a tough review to read on your own work. And someone, maybe the publisher, had tried to cross them out with a magic marker so Jane wouldn't see them.
But the marker wasn't thick enough. Rob and Jane can hold the pages up to the light and read the snarky comments underneath.
Can you imagine? You finally get your book, you fought the post office for it, and now there's a heckler in the margins.
It creates a very tense atmosphere in the apartment. Jane is naturally upset. She feels violated. And this is the moment the session begins. The atmosphere is heavy. And how does Seth enter?
With the best opening line ever. May I join the party?
May I join the party? He is completely unbothered.
He's cool as a cucumber. He tells Jane basically, chill out. The book is going to be controversial. Get used to it.
He frames it perfectly. He says the book will be, in its field, the most controversial of the year. He reframes the criticism. Instead of it being an attack, it's a sign of impact. If people are writing angry notes in the margins, it means you said something that matters.
But then it gets really good. Seth decides he isn't just going to reassure Jane. He is going to profile the critic.
There's the Dr. In-Stream material.
Oh.
They don't have a name yet, really, just some initials. But Seth goes into full psychometry mode. He reads the energy of the handwriting in the margins.
And the details are wildly specific. He doesn't just say he's a grumpy man.
No, he starts pulling data points. He says, connection to Harvard around the year 1934.
Boom. Specific date. Specific institution.
He says the man lives near inland water or a quiet bay. He gives the initials MS.
And then the physical traits. He says the man has a stomach disorder and a noticeable mole near his nose.
A mole. That is not something you guess. That is a highly visual detail.
And then the personality profile. Seth says he is cautious about money, and this is a biting critique, prides himself upon an open mind, but actually holds on to his ideas very tightly.
That is a sick burn from a spirit guide. He thinks he's open-minded, but he's actually a hoarder of old ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Seth is dismantling the critic's intellectual authority.
And then the fashion. This is the cherry on top.
The vest. Seth says he is sometimes given to wearing checkered vests.
I love this visual so much. We have this grumpy, Harvard-educated academic with a stomach ache wearing a loud checkered vest, scribbling angry notes on a manuscript about ESP, and Seth is just dismantling him from the other side.
And Seth has one final roast.
Yeah.
He says for a scientist, he is himself rather long-winded and can hardly afford to take me to task on that particular point.
Seth acknowledging his own tendency to talk a lot while calling the critic a hypocrite. It's fantastic. It shows so much personality. This isn't a robot speaking. It's a witty, observant intelligence.
It humanizes the source.
Yeah.
But more importantly, it serves a psychological function for Jane. It distracts her from the hurt of the criticism and turns it into a game of detective work.
Yeah.
It empowers her. She's no longer the victim of the notes. She's the investigator of the writer.
Absolutely. It completely flips the power dynamic. Speaking of the book, though, this leads right into segment 4. Seth stops roasting the critic and starts acting like strategic editor.
Yes. He gives advice on how to structure the upcoming Seth book. This is interesting because it shows Seth understands human psychology and marketing.
He suggests a sandwich approach, right?
In a way. He advises him to put the heavy metaphysical stuff right in the middle. The concepts like the inverted time system moment points and the dream universe.
Why the middle, though? Why not lead with the heavy hitters?
Strategy. He wants to capture the reader's imagination with the overall picture first. He says the material on reincarnation will appear consistent and logical only within the whole framework.
That makes a lot of sense. If you lead with you were a goat in a past life, people might tune out immediately. But if you explain how time works and how consciousness functions first, then reincarnation becomes just a logical consequence of the system.
Exactly. He is building a foundation. He says the overall picture will capture the imagination and the specifics will follow. He understands that you have to hook the intellect before you challenge the belief system.
It's just smart writing. Now let's pivot to something that happened to Rob. We talked about the pillow, we talked about the critic, now we have the phantom radio.
This is a classic example of a hypnagogic hallucination, or what Seth claims is a real perception.
So Rob is lying in bed, it's late, he's half asleep, and suddenly he hears music.
Like trick guitar music. Clear harmonious chords.
And there is no radio on. The house is entirely silent.
But the music is distinct. Rob describes it as having an echoing quality. He listens to it for a full minute before he wakes up fully and realizes, wait, this isn't physical.
Now, the skeptic would say he was dreaming. Brain misfire, auditory hallucination.
But Rob and Jane had been out that night. They had gone to a club with a live band.
And the band had an electric guitar.
Seth confirms that this was no coincidence. He says Rob was in a dissociated state, that twilight zone between waking and sleeping, and he literally tuned in to the band, which was still playing across town.
So it wasn't a hallucination, it was a remote audio feed.
In Seth's view, yes. He says you did indeed tune in on your dancing establishment. It validates the idea that consciousness isn't trapped in the skull. When the physical defenses are down, like when you're drifting off to sleep, you can accidentally pick up a broadcast from miles away.
It makes you wonder how much of what we hear in our heads is actually ours and how much is just static from the neighbors.
It's a chilling thought. We assume our internal monologue is private and local. Seth suggests we are constantly swimming in a sea of other people's signals.
And that leads us perfectly into the grand finale of this session, the envelope experiment. This is segment 6, and this is where things get really technical and really fascinating.
The envelope experiments are a staple of the early sessions. They are the scientific backbone of the material. The setup is simple. Rob puts a drawing or an object in a sealed double envelope. Jane, channeling Seth, tries to describe it without seeing it.
Remote viewing, basically.
Yes. This was experiment number 36.
So let's look at what Seth saw. What were his impressions?
He gets very specific imagery. He mentions something rising like a geyser explosive type of motion.
Geyser? Explosive, okay.
He mentions star shapes.
All stars.
He describes horizontal lines, ribbon-like shapes. And he says it is dark and shadowy in the center.
And he also mentions missionary or religion.
Right. So the tension builds. They open the envelope.
And inside is a drawing for a key value sticker for a department store. John's Bargain Store.
A commercial sticker. Not a geyser, not a star, not a missionary.
So was it a fail? At first glance, it looks like a total miss.
It looks like a miss. But this is where the deep dive gets deep. They analyze why Seth saw what he saw.
Because Rob didn't just put a random object in there.
Rob had sealed a drawing of the sticker in the envelope. But, and this is the crucial twist, Rob had a tracing paper draft of that drawing sitting in his pocket in the closet.
Wait, so the final object is in the envelope. The draft, the rough sketch is in Rob's pocket.
Yes. And when they analyzed the data, they realized Seth wasn't describing the object in the envelope. He was describing the draft in the pocket.
No way. Walk me through the evidence on that.
Let's look at the hits. Seth saw horizontal lines. The final object didn't have them. But Rob's draft, the one in his pocket, had specific horizontal ruling lines he used to center the text.
Nah, that matches.
Seth saw dark and shadowy in the center. The final object was clean. But the draft, it had heavy pencil smudges on the back where Rob had rubbed it to transfer the image. Seth was seeing the smudges.
He was seeing the dirt on the paper. That is incredibly specific.
Seth saw star shapes and explosive motion. The drawing featured a 6-pointed star. Jane associated star with fireworks or a geyser.
And the religion thing.
The stickers were for a box of religious greeting cards. That was the context of the job.
So Seth completely bypassed the target object in the envelope and went straight for the object that was emotionally connected to Rob.
Exactly. The tracing paper was the thing Rob had worked on. It had his pencil marks, his sweat equity, if you will. It was in his pocket. It was hotter psychically than the sanitized version in the envelope.
This tells us something profound about telepathy, doesn't it? It's not like radar where you just ping the object in front of you.
No. Telepathy seems to follow emotional lines of association. It followed the link to Rob. Rob created the draft. Rob's mind knew about the smudges in the lines. Seth accessed Rob's mental image or the object with the most psychic weight, which happened to be the one in the pocket, not the one in the envelope.
That is wild. It suggests that if you are trying to hide something, putting it in a sealed envelope doesn't matter if you're still thinking about the draft you have in your pocket.
Precisely. The physical barrier of the envelope was irrelevant. The psychological connection was the conduit.
So we have a session that covers neck pain, a roast of a critic, a phantom radio, and a telepathic misfire that was actually a direct hit on the wrong target.
It creates a comprehensive picture of reality where consciousness is constantly leaking. It leaks into our dreams, it leaks into our muscles, causing pain, it leaks out to hear distant music, and it leaks across town to read snarky notes on a manuscript.
It really makes you think about that boundary we think we have. We think we are private. We think our thoughts are locked inside our heads.
And this material suggests we are actually broadcasting 24/7.
Which is both terrifying and amazing.
It is the nature of what we explore here.
Well, we strongly encourage you to not just take our word for it. Go to the source yourself.
Absolutely. Study the Seth material books for yourself. There is so much detail we couldn't even get to.
You can visit the New Awareness Network website and bookstore at sethcenter.com, the-early sessions. It's an absolute treasure trove.
As the sentiment goes in, the material knowledge is most valuable when understood and applied. Don't just listen to the ghost story. Fix your pillow.
Fix your pillow, fix your relationship with your dead, and definitely watch out for men in checkered vests.
Indeed.
Thank you for joining us on this trip back to 1966. Keep your mind open and maybe check your pockets for stray thoughts. You never know who is reading them.
Goodbye for now.
See you in the next Deep Dive.